Oh, light. Wait, do you have lighting going on? Do you have like in-house lighting, sir?
I don't. I'm just standing today, and I'm closer to the light bulb, so maybe
Okay.
that's it.
I was like, wait a minute. It's like Parkhurst has like lighting and stuff going on. It's like you've been professionally lighted all of a sudden.
No.
It is okay. So just why are you standing?
Just had energy this morning, John. Just didn't feel like sitting for this one, and I don't
Where,
know.
what
No
is,
particular reason.
where is this energy coming from, sir? You're not supposed to have energy at 9:30 on a Friday morning.
I don't know. Maybe it is because it's a Friday, with the weekend ahead.
Uh-huh. All right. So uh we got a couple different things to get into. I do want to discuss Crew and Atlanta. I do want to discuss the national team, considering what happened here with 140,000 folks showing up in a 4-day period, and getting ready for Atlanta and Crew this time around. When it comes to a season, and this is what we got into with Chris when we started our conversation. When you have a season start the way that it does, both in Columbus and in Atlanta, where you have new faces, whether it's new coach in Columbus's, new coach in Atlanta's, new players coming in because of the byproduct of a new coach wanting to bring in certain players and philosophies, but asking for patience because of all of the adjustments and everything that has to go on for a player. How difficult is it for the player to be patient, knowing that there is change going on around them? They might be a part of that change, but how difficult is that for the player to understand? Yeah, there's a greater picture here. I want things to happen quickly, naturally, but sometimes you've got to be patient. How much does that drive a player crazy in a situation like this?
A lot. Yeah, players want to win, right? That's you can't get to the top level without being very competitive, and players want to win. So if they're out there on the field, they're not thinking about a process; they're thinking about winning the game. And so that's challenging, especially for certain players, right? If you're fighting for a new contract at the end of the season, if you're not guaranteed anything, if you're older and you don't have many opportunities left, it's tough to be patient. You don't want to go through a build out. And so that is difficult. And it kind of depends on what type of level of patience they're talking about. Are we talking about the multi-year process patience? Or are we talking, hey, we just need patience here for the first couple months until everything starts to click? I think that there's different levels to that. So I think right now it's easier to ask, the Columbus guys for patience than it is Atlanta United, because Columbus has had success recently, and so to expect a little bit of turmoil as they change coach and a roster change a little bit and get back to it, you think that you can get back quickly, but Atlanta, it's a little bit different. They haven't gotten back quickly, so it's tough to be patient.
True. So then when you're having those kinds of conversations with your mentees, even if they're already there, if change is happening around them, they're not a part of the change. They're a part of the stability that is wherever they are, whether it's high school or club or what have you. How patient are your mentees these days, just in general, about results and change and all of these other wild cards that affect them and that they themselves can affect with their appearance and how they carry themselves on the field and off? How patient are your mentees these days?
Yeah, it's equally as tough for youth athletes, right? I mean, a lot of them have that desire to win right now, right away, and that's great. The competitive spirit is important, and it's what drives a lot of them. But for them, it's probably even more important to have a little bit more patience as far as development, right? That's the most important thing, and that's tough to convey to some younger players that, hey, your development here is more important than your result on the weekend. Because like everybody, we live week to week and we want to win and we want to feel good and we want to have fun, and when we're winning, we do more of that. But they're not getting paid to play. They're not getting contracts right now. They're they're not having that pressure of playing in front of thousands of people. So for them, if they have goals to play at this college or pro, right, the development is so much more important. And that is a process. And that is more throughout the week than it is on one game day over the weekend. So, but that's a tough thing for younger players to comprehend.
And so then do you and Greg, how do you break that down where it's not just a game day, even though, yes, you're being looked at early in your life for what you're doing on the field. But you're going to have coaches. You're going to have coaches regardless of level. It could be club coaches. It could be coaches who might want to look at tape, come by and visit, watch a game, sit in row Z, and sit there and just kind of look at the how you interact and all this kind of stuff. Do you talk about that whole three-dimensional idea of how you carry yourself and how much of a conversation is that? Yeah, results are important. Yeah, the numbers are important, but it's how you carry yourself that is just as important because of the whole first impression and your future going from there.
Oh, absolutely. It's a huge thing that we talk about. It's one of the biggest things that college coaches look for, because, we talk to high school players all the time that in season, college coaches are around players more than their own family. And so they don't want to have to deal with an attitude. They don't want to have to deal with a grumpy kid, or somebody that brings bad body language or negative energy. They just don't. So if you have even an iota of that, your talent has to be through the roofs for them to even consider you. Otherwise, there's just so many options. They'll just move on.
Yeah.
And so, creating those habits and that behavior from an earlier age is important so that it's a benefit and not something that holds you back. Yeah, well-rounded people and players. That's who we're trying to develop.
Well, if you need to sit, feel free to sit. Then you can adjust the camera mid-segment. Standing, I know for a full 25 minutes, I'm sure lactic acid becomes your friend, and you hate that kind of stuff. Our buddy Michael
I
Parker.
don't speak of lactic acid now that I'm not a professional athlete anymore, John.
Well, when you're out on the golf course and you're sitting there on like 14, going, "Man, I need a birdie," and nothing's working right. Trust me, I know where you're going.
I'll definitely blame it on the lactic acid.
See that when you don't break 90, it's because of the lactic acid that happened on 14 and 15. When you've got the modern day student and the student athlete, you mentioned the coaches that are around them and looking at them and how they interact in three dimensions. How many times do you get a mentee that is basically brought into the process by a parent or a coach? Just like, I can't believe I'm here. I'm here so I don't get fined, kind of a thing. They come into being a mentee in a negative, with that negative cloud. Do you get any of that, or is it all 100% we want to improve and we know we want to improve? Do you get any negatives that you get to turn into positives?
Here and there, but thankfully it's few and far between,
Okay.
which has been a really awesome experience, because it was one thing that we were concerned about when we started the business,
Mhm.
was how are we going to deal with the kids that don't want to be here at all? They're difficult to talk to. um, and we've had very, very few of those experiences, which is um, surprising and also awesome. um, when you do have that experience and you're able to actually turn them into a believer and somebody that enjoys having the conversations, that's awesome.
Mhm.
But it's challenging for sure.
Okay, so I'll ask, how challenging is it? Because it seems like you're trying to bang against this brick wall. First off, the young student athlete comes in, they don't want to be there. I'm here because my mom or my dad or whomever, my parents, they brought me into this situation. They kind of sit there probably like a bump on a log. They don't want to listen to a word that you or Greg have to say about the whole thing. How do you break through? How have you learned to break through in those kinds of situations?
Try and make it more fun. And usually I'll try and do more video analysis. Right, show them a bunch of videos and talk through things, because I think a lot of players have never had that experience of watching video with someone dissecting things that of their own video or even other videos. And I help I no, I think that brings something different, something unique that they can learn from, but also a little credibility to me or Greg, and just that we're not here just to lecture kids. And so I think once we kind of get that involved a little bit, then we can kind of get into more of the mentoring stuff and talk about conversations. So I think it's just finding that balance, but I do think video helps a
Yeah.
lot of those sessions.
And do you use their own video as proof? Do you pull, from MLS and international stuff to give examples? How do you interact with that student athlete? Is it their video, or are you bringing stuff in?
Either. If they provide it, we'll use theirs. If they don't, I'll use my own. So just whatever we have available. I mean, I've got a huge library, so in a perfect world, I'm able to see some of their video and say, "Hey, here, look at the pro make the same mistake," or "Hey, look at the pro deal with it differently," or "Hey, I saw something recently that's very similar. Check this out," and kind of relate it and let them know, like, "Hey, same thing happens in a U14 game happens this in this program, and hey, look at this center back make the same mistake, and he gets paid a lot of money." Right? So it kind of just validates them a little bit, and like, hey, we all make these mistakes.
I was going to say, what's the reaction when they sit there and they see, someone not named Michael Parkhurst or Greg Garza make a mistake? You sit there. Do you have video of Big Red making a mistake? You sit there and go, "Now here's what Jeff Lorenowitz did wrong," and show that to those folks. What's their main reaction when they get to see that adults are making the same mistakes when they're twice the age of the student athlete?
Anytime I'm showing a Jeff Lorenowitz clip, it's probably, if he makes a mistake, it's the amazing reaction he has to that mistake to then go win the ball back or crush somebody. Um, but I think it's just a relief
Yeah.
feeling of like, yeah, it's good to see pros make mistakes too. They're human. I have this clip from like 2 weeks ago. It's Tottenham playing Nottingham
You
Forest,
got a lot of those Spurs clips, I bet. Yeah.
and it's 1-0, and obviously it's a huge game. They're fighting relegation. It's in the second half. It's only 1-0, and the Tottenham center back, he's the captain sometimes. I can't remember his name right now.
Was it the Christian Romero?
Christian Romero
Yeah.
makes 3 mistakes on one play,
Oh.
the third mistake of which is just complete laziness.
Mm-hmm.
And the ball's in the back of the net, and he's there throwing his hands up, blaming other people. And so I point that out to a few different people the last couple of weeks of saying, "Hey, check this out, right? Look at mistake number 1. Look at mistake number 2, right? Yet you can still recover from these 2 mistakes if you just had effort here for the next 3 seconds."
Mm-hmm.
And the effort wasn't there, and the ball's in the back of the net. So yeah, I love showing those clips, and it's not to hate on pros or say that he's the best player.
No.
Right? It's just to say, hey, it happens at the highest level.
So, all right, and so I'll ask this, since you asked about 1 compounding into 2, compounding into 3. I've referred to it as quicksand, and literally it is a blatant ripoff of Shane Falco talking about fear in one of the best football movies of all time, The Replacements. And Jimmy McGinty, who is anything but a conventional coach, Gene Hackman, is the head coach of the Washington Sentinels, and he's got this group of players that have been assembled from all acts of life, and they're trying to win in this environment. And he asks the players what they're afraid of, and then Shane Falco says quicksand. It's like you make a mistake, then another, and then you're afraid to even continue to try because all you've been doing is making mistakes. How do you and Greg talk to your mentees about those quicksand moments and remind folks that, hey, there's a lifeline out there somewhere that you can get out of this mess mentally? How do you talk about trying to stop the compounding of mistakes, not let it get to you, and then come forward and turn the rest of things into a positive?
Totally. And that's why we try and normalize mistakes, because when we normalize them and say, hey, the game of soccer is a game of mistakes. It's something that we say all the time. There's just constant mistakes all over the field, right? For every goal you give up, right? Almost every goal, the other team's looking at it like, what mistake did we make? Right. So there's just all these mistakes happening throughout a game. And usually, if you make a mistake, the first mistake's not going to hurt you. usually you can recover from it, or the team can recover from it if the reaction is good. And so the reaction is far more important than the actual mistake.
Mhm.
So that's what we try and say of like, hey, focus on the reaction, not the mistake. And if the reaction's good, people remember the reaction. You remember the reaction far more than you remember the mistake. You can make up for it so quick. And if you do that, you're much less likely to go through this quicksand of, hey, one mistake after the next, because it is real. And even teams go through that where it's like one loss, two loss, three losses. How quickly can you bounce back from a loss? Same thing with, a little individual mistake. How quickly can you bounce back from it? Because those that have success are the ones that bounce back so fast, versus the ones that don't. But that's our main message, is to normalize it and focus on the reaction.
Okay, so then taking that, focusing on the reaction, if you are in an environment where you have new players, new coaches, new system, and you're trying to learn that new system as a part of this new collective and you're making mistakes, then how do you take that into the context of, okay, we're trying to go forward in this new idea and not get wrapped up in it? Because that's adding another element to all of this. It's like under normal circumstances, okay, you make a mistake, fine, you can shake it off and go forward. But then you're in this new kid at school environment, or you're at the new school, and you're trying to learn the new things that everybody's confident that is going to work later on down the road. Do you teach your mentees about perspective at all? Do they have perspective?
Mhm. That's tough because, we're circling back to the conversation of earlier of the
We are.
process,
Yeah.
right? Because the process takes perspective in order to understand it. And that's a challenge. That's one of the tougher things to help a teenager with, right? Because they want it now.
Mhm.
Who doesn't, right? So that's a big challenge, but of course that we try to help out with.
Mhm.
But there's no easy way about that, right? We talk about learning from, and that's why we like to watch video with players.
Right.
And say, hey, there's a lot of pros that don't like to watch video because they can't own up to mistakes, and that's not a good attribute. We have to be able to learn from things, right? We all make these mistakes, and how can we learn from them and grow from them? Because we have the most growth when we're uncomfortable and when we do make mistakes. And actually, I try and tell players, please, please, please do not try and go out there and be perfect, and do not try and make a 100% passing accuracy. That's not the goal ever, 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 ever. In fact, sometimes I'm saying, hey, have a goal of making at least 2 to 3 mistakes per game or per half, depending on what position you make,
Huh.
because that means you're trying things, right? You're not playing safe. And that way you're not even scared to make those mistakes, because you know what? I want to make mistakes. That means I'm trying new things. So that's one way we try and do it.
And then the confidence, I would imagine, that you're trying to instill without mentees understanding, you're trying to instill confidence into their own collective freedom, where it's okay to think outside of that vision that you're supposed to have, that tunnel vision. It's okay to kind of color outside the lines a little bit. It's
Mhm.
okay to be it's okay to fear going forward, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, as opposed to being in fear and staying within yourself or within that little area. If you're trying something, you're being aggressive and you're trying to fail forward, that's okay. Yeah.
For sure. For sure. That's how growth is made. And that's how you not only grow as a player, but your confidence grows and your abilities grow. Because if we don't try things out on this field, we don't know if we can do it.
Mhm.
Right? You don't know if you can play through that line, or if you can take that guy one on one if you don't try. So yeah, that's where the confidence takes the next level. And people look at, well, it might hurt my confidence. Well, you could take your game and your confidence to the next level as well, right? Opening up a new skill that maybe you didn't even know you had yet.
But that fear almost, that's got to be one of the bigger stumbling blocks that you have in dealing with your mentees, because they know they're good, or at least they know that they're at a certain level. They know at the same time they want to get to that next level, but they think, I'm sure, that if they make a mistake trying to get to that next level, then they're going to be viewed at through that prism and not the idea of, okay, I have this base of talent here. I've failed going forward, and that folks are going to look at that and have that as their lasting impression as opposed to the body of work. It seems like there's almost like a dichotomy there that they've got to juggle through.
Yeah, for sure. And we talk about how scouts and coaches, they're not just looking for players that have success on the field. They're looking for players that are not afraid
Huh.
to try things,
Okay.
because, it's much easier to help a player who's willing to go make mistakes and could go try things if they've got a good attitude when it doesn't work,
Okay.
than it is to help a player who's afraid to play, and afraid to take risks. I was speaking with Kano the other day, actually, and we had a young kid in with Rhode Island, and he said, "Yeah, he has no confidence to go out there and take risks." And so he was literally just basing his evaluation off this younger player of, hey, does he have the confidence to go into a group and just do his thing and not have any fear and go make mistakes? Because at least you see the confidence and you see the, I don't have any fear, because from that you can teach a player a lot.
And when you get to what's it like to just sit there and have a conversation with a head coach slash GM where you can sit there and go, well, yeah, I like this kid, but it's just it's crazy to sit there and at times sit there and think that, okay, if they were to unlock that, but it seems like that step to unlock that next thing has got to be one of the hardest things that they've ever done, though. That's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
And
It
plus,
is
you
tough.
get stuck in that quicksand idea again because, okay, I know I can do better, but then I make that first mistake, even though I'm trying to be positive and grow my game, but then you're kind of retreating back to who you were, and then you're kind of almost stuck on a treadmill, almost trying to figure out, okay, if I go forward and I'm successful, great. If I go forward and then I fail, it gets stuck in your head, and then you get back into that whole quicksand. See, this is why this whole dichotomy and everything is almost a circle that you seem to be dealing with at times when you and Greg are being mentors here.
Circle of soccer, John.
It is the circle hashtag circle of soccer. Absolutely true. Okay, so as we are now in the circle of soccer, Atlanta's taking on Columbus. I don't this weekend. I don't know if you know anything about either of these teams, if you've ever played against them or anything like that.
Familiar.
Yeah, they might be, and they are two teams that are in transition. They are mirror images, I think, of each other to a certain degree, where you have in Columbus's part, you don't have Wilfred Nancy anymore. You have Henrik Rydstrom, who I've referred to as basically Wilfred Nancy adjacent, where it's the same thing, kind of, sort of, but you brought in a couple of other players. You're trying to get things figured out, and if you still need to sit, go ahead and sit. That's perfectly fine. We're in the home stretch. I know that we're getting there. I know you're probably
I just get antsy, but I still rather be standing.
you're flexing your, I see you're probably flexing your calves and trying to sit there and do a flex and extend underneath the camera. So I know how this goes. Columbus, they're in transition because of a coaching change and a couple of new players. Atlanta is in a coaching change or a return from a coach who is different than he was before. New players are coming in, and these teams are still trying to find themselves over injuries and international breaks and things like that. What's it like to be a team still, trying to find itself and figure itself out, knowing that being as confident as you are, which is why I wanted to bring it up, that if you push through to the other side, everything's going to be okay. But, it's like you're confident and you're waiting for that breakthrough moment, but you've got to be patient as a professional at the same time. I think that's what we have with these two clubs.
Yeah, it's really challenging because it gets to a point where, as a player, you're thinking, you know what, we need to figure it out while we win,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so while coach wants us to do this, if we get the lead and it's not working,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to do what needs to be done in order for us to keep the game where we're winning. And so then it becomes a little challenge of, hey, are you sticking with the plan,
Yeah.
or are you playing to win the game? And obviously, you want to try and do both, but that becomes a tough thing in the player's mind because, right, like I said earlier, you want to win,
Yeah.
and so that becomes tough. And if you don't win, players start to lose faith in that process, and that's not good.
Yeah. And even though it might have been a mistake from coloring outside the lines, like we've been talking about, the fear of failing forward, then you're dealing with that as a part of all of this give and take. Okay. Dell's got a question, and it
So,
deals with that P word that we talk about here occasionally when you're being a mentor and
yeah.
dealing with mentees. Serious question. Went to a high school game Wednesday. Dad was berating his son from the stands, and after the game, told him, wait until they get home. How do you handle that as a coach?
Yeah, don't know if Dell's asking if I was the coach of that player's
Mhm.
team and I saw it, or if I was the mentor.
Take it both ways.
If I was the coach, I'd want to make sure that the kid's all right, and handling however dad's feeling, okay, first and foremost, safety wise. But also, I'd want to have a conversation with the dad of saying, hey, this is not how we want to facilitate a good experience for our players,
Yeah.
right? We trying to do this coaching, and let's talk about what you're seeing and how the players playing, and let's talk through these things. But we're out here having fun, and we're trying to get better, and we're trying to grow good human beings. And all these things that I talk about as a mentor, and switching to the mentor side of things, go out the window when they see a real life mentor in front of them as you acting like this. How can I tell them it's about the process? How can I tell them about confidence, or not being afraid to make mistakes and all these things when they're getting berated on the sideline during a game
Mhm.
for everything they're doing? It's impossible. So that's I'd have to have a conversation with the parent. For the child, it's difficult. What do you tell them, to ignore their parent? It's really difficult. So unfortunately, it happens a lot out there. I still remember from my youth days it occurring, and it's a shame that it's part of every sport.
Okay. I want to finish on a positive note. So if you would please, sir, let everybody know what is going on in the Michael Parkhurst hashtag Circle of Soccer, and let everybody know what the deal is about what's going on with you guys at Beyond Goals and your golf game and watching games and traveling the country in Rhode Island. Hit me.
Well, we got our Rhode Island FC. I'll start with Rhode Island FC.
There you go. There you
We beat Hartford in the Open Cup, which was
go.
awesome.
Yes,
Then we
you
drew the
did.
Revs, so we're going to play the Revs at our stadium
Uh-huh.
next week, which is
Uh-huh.
awesome. So fantastic opportunity there.
Yeah.
Um, Mentoring's going really well. Excited to start the center back academy next week with
Ooh,
Jimmy,
oh, that's right.
um,
Yeah.
Jimmy Conrad, and then I think I'm booking a trip down to Atlanta to catch the Nashville game in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So excited to be down there for that. Got a camp going on in Atlanta in the summer. We're doing a couple free clinics while I'm there with City of Atlanta. So a lot of stuff going on leading up to the World Cup.
Okay, so when you and Jimmy start center back you, or do you want to drag him in here on a Friday so we can talk center back you and talk about the center back circle of soccer?
I can try. We'll see if he's up at 6:30 in the morning on the West Coast.
Well, he's just going to have to get moving. You got to get him moving, man, and make sure that everything is there. As always, my friend, congratulations on the big win in the first El Clamico of the season and getting that squared away. It's always great to pick your brain. And I know that, like I said, my questions go in 3 dimensions, and it's like this really wild roadmap of trying to figure out what's going on. But there's a lot of stuff that in this golden retriever brain of mine gets triggered in conversations when we have conversations about everything that's important. Uh, as always,
That's why I enjoy it, John. This golden retriever is not thinking about much right now.
no, well, I know what. I know what Deacon's thinking about. Can you stop talking? Stop talking. So, as always, my friend, great to see you. We'll catch up with you, and especially when you come down here for the Nashville game. That's going to be fun.
Yes, sir. It will be.